Hello beautiful people, I'm happy to be back, and this time we're going to go through this Renderman render engine. It's been a while since, I think it's like 1984 or something, and it's version 27 as you could see, and this is great. It has both CPU, GPU and XPU version. It's free for non-commercial version, and you could try it, and I encourage you to do so because it has some great features. It has pretty nice picture, of course, one of the best in the industry, as you could see. I encourage you to dive into the website. It has a lot of features. It has a lot of documentation, fundamentals, or sources. You could see you have your tutorials and like the instances of the picture you are expected to have. So yeah, that is great. I have a few tests here and there. As you could see, this is like non-version, like with non-post color correction, has great defocus of the camera and depth of field, great, like the shader out of the box representation on the surface. Nice fall-offs, yeah, it has something special to me, to my eye. Maybe you could find the same thing here, so yeah, let's dive into it and see what you got. And of course we have different version of it, the same head, we have something like that. And by the way, this one is rendered with a lot of noise. And to be honest, one of the greatest denoiser out there. It's a bit slow, but at the end it has super great results. As you can see, it's super clean, and I'm going to show you the original picture. A lot of noise, and this is noise reduction. It's great to me. Animation as well. This picture had a lot of noise, and after all, super clean, super stable, no pixel variation whatsoever. And here we could see even more because that is closer to the view, and surface is super clean with no noise. And I had a lot of noise on this picture as well. I will start with this website. You can discover every aspect of it by yourself. By the way, it has some great features of tutorials, resources. Resources is like the model itself, textures, HDRIs. Yeah, it's great. But we're going to go through all the installation process, set up basic render, and do some noise reduction as well. Under this page, when you try and buy, you could see that you could buy it, you could have the price, and you could use it for non-commercial work and read all of that stuff. You need to set up your account, of course, and click try for free. At this page, you could read all that stuff and click this button. You need to set up everything here, your first name, last name, and everything, and then you will have your installation packet. I will do that pretty quickly and be back to you. Okay, the next page is here. Download it, file, pretty quick. Go and open it. Next we'll install it. Next, browse it, install, yeah. Finish. If you do everything right, the next page will show you that you have non-commercial Renderman installer. If you do something wrong, that will ask you for a serial number or something like that. So you could uninstall it and go back and do the same, just for a non-commercial version. Here you need to specify your name and here you want to show all, And you could see every other variation and option for this to install. I don't need for Blender, I just need for Houdini, and the latest version at this point is like 27.1. Next, and just wait. Yeah, we're finished. Now let's go and do a few things to set up this render properly. And before we go any further, so you could go after your installation process, just as simple, you could go to your Houdini and try to do a Renderman, and then you could see that there is nothing here. Renderman RIS, and yeah, it has some feature, but it hasn't ROP, it hasn't light, it has nothing. And of course, if you do, for example, Solaris, go here and try to find your Renderman, it's not working. You could go to your disk C, program files, Pixar, and under this you have 3 folders with name, installer, Man Pro servers, and Houdini, Renderman for Houdini. In the first one, you could see that this is different version for Python, and we have this packages file. If you open that up, you could see that you could investigate all the versions you need. For example, I have this 20.5, this version one, but this is working version of the Houdini, and this is very important because this Renderman will work the best with only these versions of the Houdini. So make sure that is the right one. So what we want to do, I will copy this file and go to your documents, and under the Houdini 20.5, as you could see, under the packages, I want to install this file over here. So the Renderman will work with packages and do all the work you need to do. I think that there was an error out there. I think this one, you don't need this comma over there. Press Ctrl S, and it's not that I'm so clever and dandy, but I saw this in the video, and I will link below. After that, what we need to do? Another clean thing, that I have this OCO file, and this OCO file is this is file from the Houdini, and this is referred to the file that Pixar has. So all the color correction and texture conversation will go smoothly. You could do whatever you want. If you need, you could link that to the Windows environment variable. You could link to the one that goes with Houdini itself, but I did it here and it works pretty nice. But this is from the previous one, so I may need to make sure that, yeah, this folder and folder Man Pro server is not existing anymore, because I have 27.1. So I want to properly set up this one. Go here, as you could see, OCO under lib, and this file, and yeah, ACES, and this file is there. So make sure that everything linked correctly before we go any further. That's it for the installer, and let's open our Houdini. Make sure you copy your packages file under the Houdini documents, your version of Houdini, and here, and I will link to this OCO file that is created by Houdini itself, and I will link inside this file our OCO file from the Renderman itself, just not to have this conflict of interest in the color correction. And if you do everything correctly, you could go to the shelves and you could see that Renderman 27 indeed is here, and all the folders and all the buttons are there. So if we click here, you could see that, yeah, indeed Renderman is here. Another way to test things out, you could go and create new inspector and something like packages browser, and you could see that we have everything set up correctly. So what we're going to do next, we go to the Solaris desktop. It's like workspace, and here we have, if you do everything, set up everything correctly, Renderman XPU, GPU and CPU, and reset is an old legacy version as well. This is USD pipeline, and if you are not familiar with that, I will encourage you to investigate this topic beforehand. I will not cover everything, but yeah, a few things here and there I will talk through. USD pipeline is universal serial description, like was created by Pixar as well. So yeah, this is like two things from the both from the one core. What is very specific to the Renderman, so if you go here and go to the new tab, you could see that Renderman has its like a few tabs new. The first one is the texture manager. This will help you to convert your textures to the specific format that is best suited with Renderman, TXT or TX, I don't remember correctly. And that will do all the color space conversion as well. So if you work in ACES workflow, that will convert that back and forth. By the way, if you go to the color correction, right click on this icon, you could see that I'm viewing my desktop as sRGB, and I do conversation as SDR, and you could check that here, also settings. And because we have set these packages before, that will link correctly. As you could see, this file path is the same as we have in the packages file. So yeah, this is all set up. You could pick your image from the folder, or you could find that in the scene and just reconvert, and we'll do that later a bit. Another thing that we have is live statistic, and that will show you all the render paths. And another thing that we have is this preset browser. It's like preset of all the material you have for free, and it's very cool starting point to get familiar with. Oh, of course, we have HDRIs as well. Great, you have to see that. So for example, surface maybe fabric or something, right click, import. In the previous version, like 27, because this one is 27.1, it would import your file into this material path, and you need to go there, copy the file, copy the structure of the material, and go back here. But now it's like one click solution, material library, and we have this one, pxrSurface, with all the settings you need. We go back to the materials a bit later, but yeah, we have that. Okay, to start with, I will go and create subcreate. This is the one. I will not explain everything in terms of this context, USD context and Solaris and so on. But yeah, we're working with a primitive path, which is determined here, and you could work with layers and arcs and everything in here, and it's pretty nice to work in the team with this format. As a solo artist, it's great as well. Yeah, I love the process of rendering in here, and with the years it's getting better and better. So starting with, this is subcreate. Subcreate is something like SOP inside of the OLOP, and you do all your nodes here. For example, test geometry copy bar is a great one to start with. and I want bone capture, bone deform, and that will allow me to have my animation. Few things to consider. That very important thing is to have an attribute called name for this one. If you have one, it's great, but if you don't, because we have skin name and different names, and if you don't have, you need to make sure that you have a name primitive, string primitive on the primitive level class, string attribute, sorry, and you could rename it capybara, yeah, and that will help you to apply all the materials to this name or separate it or whatever. And also shop material path is important as well, and the path could be used as well in here. So the main structure, and very simple, is to create your geometry. You could create a null and say something like geo, so you know that this is a geo. You could have as many as you want. Create another one. Here we have, for example, materials. Another one, it will be lights. After the lights, very important is render. And am I missed something? Yeah, the camera itself is very important for this context. And everything we do here will be reflected here as well. So as you could see, we have capybara, it's a primitive path, and we have name that we determined early in here. And to work a bit more convenient, so yeah, let me create another one and call it camera. And if we alt click on this icon, we could create a camera from this view. And what is cool here, that the order is not that important, I would say, without nuances, because if you have something animated, you would want to have it here. But again, this is a big topic to discuss. So now, as you could see, when we edit a camera, we have it here at the camera 1. When we go down the line, you have the camera in sub create as well. So that will affect each other and edit on top of each other. And a good practice is to have a primitive node right on top of everything, and we could call it structure. Sorry. And in here you could determine all the structure for your stages before we go inside of that. And this is like I'm imagining is a folder is like disk D, for example, yeah. And if you have a shot and you declare it here, like something like that, let me just select this primitive, and you could see that we have shot on stage name. It's like a folder you created beforehand, and then you place your object inside of this folder. For example, I want the primitive kind to be a group, and you could see that we changed the icon here, and you could do all the things. And another thing is like a stage manager, and this will allow you to do the same, but after you create everything. For example, you will place it something here and just do it with the folder, and that will stay inside of your scene. So by we'll do this manually, we could create a copy and paste another line and say this will be a camera. And there will be another folder inside of this shot, right? Because we determined the shot, the camera, and that will place inside. We could do another one, And instead of a camera, we'll do geo, another one, and instead of the geo, we do lights. And inside of geo, I would like to place my material because that will go pretty close, right? Geo, materials. So we have something like that, and material will be linked to the geo itself, and we don't need to create one for the render because this is scope that will be here. And the only thing now we need to be aware of, this is primitive path, and this primitive path need to be this one. So if we copy the camera, go in here and place it here, so we have shot camera and create a $OS, so the name of this node will be placed, and we place our camera 1 inside of our structure successfully. So this is the way it's working. We create some structure, we placed it here, and that means that you could work with the team for different parts and of your SD file, because you'll need to save as USD and, for example, have different layers for everything, and every layer could be updated from different parts of your team. Okay, I'm go ahead and do the same for the geo, shot geo $OS, and that will place our geo successfully in the structure. And yeah, for this part we're good to go. And back to our Renderman, because like this is TopFX USD, and you could do a better, grab branches, merge and everything, but again, a few hours of tutorials you'll need to go through. But specific to Renderman, we have a geo settings, geometry, render geometry settings, and this is important note for the Renderman itself. Let me see, you have a camera tab and Renderman tab. By default, the primitive it's linked to is the top one, but you could drag your primitive from here, and the way it's done, it's like dragging this name, and that will do successfully the same, but affecting only this node. And under here, I want to set everything just in this example. I have a few settings. The most important one is like for the displacement itself. When we have the displacement, you want to work with the displacement, the dicing, and so on. Also, when we work with the normals, because now, if we look through the camera and go to Renderman XPU, this is the first time we launched that with no lights whatsoever. And as you could see, yeah, it's pretty responsive. Yeah, it's blank scene, but considering the XPU, and I have very low spec laptop on here just to test things out, and it's pretty responsive. The first problem that you could see that we have problem with normals, and the way to fix that, again, we could use render geometry settings, go to the polygon and just smooth normals. Click and fix that. And now you have subdivisions, you have volumes, curves, points, all this necessary data that you will use for sure. Motion blur is enabled by default. You could disable that. Also, in here is very important thing, because when you work and dealing with, when you will work for sure with the glass, you will determine different depths of rays, and this is the place where you want to work with that. Also different holders, camera visibility, baking, and so on. Oh, baking, I didn't acknowledge that this is here, but yeah. And by the way, if you want to create different geometry, SOP create you could just merge it. You don't need to have this structure, but you could just merge it and go ahead and create another merge and place it here, and you'll have basically the same as we did before, because we have determined the structure for this one, for example, and this merge is simple merge, but we have different flatten, separate, and so on. Yeah, just for you to know that merge is working here as well. Okay, go ahead and create some material, place it here. The way it works, like you create a material library, go inside and type Pixar material builder. This is the one that is go with Renderman. Go inside, and here we will create your material. Let's create one surface, pxrSurface. This is the one that is working well with this material. And for the Renderman, you have this option to work with loop, llama. It's a low layer shader. I don't use it, but you just create your diffuse and create your loops on top of each other, and this is very cool. MLTX as well, but we will work with the Renderman nodes itself. So let's go ahead and apply this. The way it works, that we need to autofill all the layers, and before we go any further, we predetermined all the paths for these nodes, so we could go here and just paste it there, and again do $OS just to grab this name, and let's double check that, yeah, indeed we have our test geometry here, and we have under the materials folder, I will say, our material builder test. The next one, you could go either to assign your to geometry and grab this one, yeah, and that will work, or you could create assigned material. I don't think this is a relevant one. This is material linker. Now it's more relevant, and you could do all different buttons here, but essentially the same. You drag your material on the center, find your geometry from this structure. Again, this is a cool one because you have different names for different parts of your geometry, for example eyes, and just drag this part for the material, and that will work for you. So again, let's fire up the material and see if that works, and I would say that that works perfectly. Okay, now go inside this material library, and let me show you what we got with the pxrSurface. First one is the pxrSurface. As you could see, this is a pre-built PBR material shader, and it has everything you need to know most of the time. But if you need more, you could use this one, because sometimes you need two different materials in the same model, and it's been working here. It's a bit weird, but Pixar material mixer, not as you expected, for example, in their different. Okay, this one is a layer mixer. This layer mixer will go inside of this input material, and this way you could have different layer of Pixar layer with different properties for the material. For example, this one could be a glass, and another one could be a metal. This one will be pink, sorry, and this one would be blue. Let's connect these two, base material, layer material, This one go inside the Pixar material mixer, and this one go inside the Pixar surface, and only the surface go to output. And again, this one the same. So you have a layer one, this one, and the mask, for example, a fractal, Pixar fractal, which will be the layer mask for that. Now we have mixed both very successfully. And again, this Pixar layer is pretty similar to Pixar surface, so we'll go ahead and look through this Pixar surface, but pretty much the same you have in the Pixar layer. Your primary specular, rough specular, and so on. So for example, for this, you could use enable, gain. This one is blue one. And yeah, let's create something shiny, and you could see that this shine only through your blue material, not on your pink one. Yeah, this is pretty silly example, but it works. Again, 2 layers onto the layer mixer and onto the Pixar surface, because from here it will not work. Go back to your Pixar surface, but also lights, just a very simple one. Go ahead and create dome light, and for the Renderman, all the lights that go with lob content will work properly. So your simple light and your point light and your area light will work properly here as well. So you create dome light, place it here. We'll dive into the light section a bit later, but for now just go ahead and create this one, texture. This is converted texture already, as I explained you, and it has exr.text. So this texture manager was involved in this process. The only thing I want to change is my path. So for now it's like light is there, and I want to be consistent with the way we set up everything just before $S. So now if we click here, we could see that our light is holding our dome, and if we rename it, that will be renamed here as well, right? HDRI. Yeah, just to better look at, in this case, something like side strong light under your Pixar surface. Let's go and just walk pretty fast through all the nodes, through all the tapes. You have your diffuse color. I'm working in the GPU, but the cool thing about that you have a consistent loop in between all the CPU, XPU. This is both GPU and XPU and GPU. So you have use whatever you want for the fastest result you need. So the diffuse one is pretty self-explanatory, the color of your material. Let me turn that off and save it, just in case. For the roughness, yeah, you have this rough shadows and rough surface overall. This is good for the surface or the ground or the texture of the cloth, for example. Double-sided, if you have something like leaves and thin piece of the geometry, you want to have your color on both sides. Exponential, I'm not sure about that, but yeah, it does something, but not for us today. And the next one, we have a few layers of specular. This is, in this case, it's 3, but obviously if you want more, I don't know why, but you could do that. For the primary specular, it's our reflection. We have an artistic and a physical mode. Physical mode is more of like index of reflection and so on. Artistic is like you drive your reflection by this face color and edge color. The first one is a face color. If you turn that to white from 0 to 1, in this case 1, you have a full reflection of your surface facing towards the camera. And if you turn that off and go ahead and do the same with the edge color, but yeah, for sure we need to do this, you have reflection on the edge of your surface. So yeah, something in between should work pretty much very well, but this is more reliable on your eye. So for example, if I want something with a paint theme or paint look, I could be something like that. Roughness, again, the roughness itself is pretty self-explanatory. You have different model of the specular. Batman, almost like a Batman, and GGX. GGX is better for the metal surface, so I would go with the GGX if I want something metal. And that's it. Again, double-sided if you need one, and Fresnel exponent, it's like the way the reflection is go on the surface. And Fresnel, I think it's more readable if you need go lower, but I would never touch this one. The same goes with the roughness specular. So this is one layer of your specular. If you want something on top of that, you could go ahead and create one more. So we could see that we have previous one, and this one is more rough or less rough. And for example, we could do this yellow. So you could see that this is more like a car paint. Pretty much the same for this one. You could have something on the edge and so on with GGX, but this is more of the style you want to achieve. Again, clear coat, another layer of the specular. To be honest, in the projects you'll never go more than 2, maybe in some rare cases you need an additional layer of some stylistic reflection, but I'm not sure. So I'm dealing with one most of the time, and this is it. So the next one is the energy compensation, and yeah, something about the diffuse and subsurface illumination energy in that. You could go ahead and read that. Irradiance is something like a layer of reflection, this rainbow reflection on top of the surface of the oil or soap bubbles. It's cool. I would add it in some when you need some stylized reflection, and you have different mode, physical and artistic. If you go with the physical, as you could see, you could change the numbers of thin width IR, and it will give you different colors, rainbow colors, from yellow and purples to reddish and so on. So if you know, you know. And the same logic behind here, face grain and edge grain. So the face toward the camera and the edge on the edge of the object. If you turn it off, you could see very subtle effect on here. The next one, the fuzz, it's something when you dealing with cloth and textures and textile. This one is something like sheen, I think, in the redshift render. The way it works, again, gain. Let me create some componential color. We don't see it. You could increase your cone angle to see more of that, but in this case I will go to the diffuse of red, and as you could see, we have this red dark black color on here under the diffuse, and when we increase it, have this red on surfaces, on the curved surfaces, so it's like a curvature of your object. Let's go ahead and turn that back. Another one would be subspace. It has very strong different mode, a few things here and there. So yeah, you just turn that on. You have different radius, different colors for that. Yeah, that makes it weird to see what we have. And you have direction, diffuse blend, and so on and so forth. I think this one is the most convenient one for the subsurface, but again, you need to play around more with that and maybe read your documentation. By the way, I will link that documentation in the description of this video. The next one is the single scatter, is like subsurface but in the one layer of the subsurface. And yeah, the glass, the refraction one, is a very important one. You could turn that on, and this has a reflection as well. So if you don't turn that on, you could see that this part is very dark and dim, and now we have something. At least we have refraction color. This is a different color inside of this refraction. You have roughness, refraction color is go to white back, and yeah, you have advanced option, and this is pretty advanced for the glass. As you can see, you need to dive into your by yourself. We have a thin option, is like a plastic one, and you have color of the interior of your glass and so on. And one more thing to consider when we're working with the glass, as I will told you, that we have an impact on from this level. So this render geometry settings under the Renderman, under the trace, you have a level of rays you will see in your refraction. So 2 is this one, 3, 4, 5. And sometimes when we have object behind the object behind the object, you will have these dark spots, and the way to fix it, go here and just increase the level of rays. For example, 10 is something like that, and 1 is very dim, and we have nothing here. Sometimes you just need to optimize your scene and don't need as much level of your refraction as you have. So dive back. That is our refraction glass. And the next one is the glow. Pretty self-explanatory. Glow of the object. It has pretty nice thing here. And under the globals, I will go ahead and pay attention to this one, the presence. This is alpha of your object. Yeah, this is different. No an opacity, no an alpha, just the presence. So for example, you have some attributes and you want to decrease your alpha of some of part of the object. This is the way it works. The next one will create a few nodes and see the most common workflow for that. So create noise, create textures, create images, and yeah, that will be it for the material library. Okay, let's go further and apply our material or set of pictures of images like you normally do. Let's create another model and see what we get with this material shaders investigation. So first, I want to change the model. So if you go ahead here and create Pixar texture, this node is allow you to load your material and to see what we got. So I prepared this list of material, model, we'll change it in a bit with most common thing like base color, height, metallic, normal, opacity, and so on. So I will build this pretty quick without that much of an explanation and see what we got. For the first thing, we will grab the color, and as you could see, we have different colors of this node. This one would be a vector, 3 components, something like that, 1, 2, 3. This one is a float, and this one is, I think it's normal vector, which will be used at a normal or bump. So for this one, we could plug directly our RGB under diffuse color and see what we got. And at this point, we would assume that very important topic, that all of your model need to be UV unwrapped. Otherwise, that will not work. The same goes with the noise. So if we do a pretty quick fractal noise and applies it here, yeah, let's scale the reflection. And as you can see, we have animated geometry, and in this case, this noise is not sticking to the surface of our geometry. So even though we have UV projection and we have UV attribute, that is not used here. And to have that more prominent, we could have more of frequency and see that, yeah, indeed, the model is jumping through the cloud of noise. In order to do that, in order to stick our texture or noise to the geo, we'll need to UV unwrap your model and use something called manifold. In Pixar, this is manifold. This is like UV projection. You plug the result onto the manifold slot of this fractal or texture, and yeah, indeed, that will stick your noise to the surface of your object. The same goes with the texture. So if you have perfectly aligned texture for your model, you just need to create your manifold and create a texture in order to work this properly. This manifold take in UV set, and that is by default an ST. It's by default, you can find it here, but you could delete it, and that is working as well. So what could be done with this manifold? We could offset, angle, frequency, wrapping around, and so on and so forth. So I change my model, and as you can see, we have this model. We could use this one, and as I was told you, we have the name of the path that will affect our model and our linking. And this one, because this is linking to the test geo, shot geo, test geo, and it's not found anything because we don't have a proper name. But moreover, I want to switch to this model, match size it. I could rename it to something like toy. And in this case, this is okay. This is okay because we have test geo in here. And now under the material is okay, but material linker is broken because it's referred to capybara, and I wrote it's wrong. And by double clicking, we could create different patterns. And if we type something like that, that will grab both of that. Apply accept, and yeah, indeed, that is working for both of that. Or I could do direct link to the GeoGeo, test geo, or toy, whatever. So when we apply everything up, this is something we have. Okay, and now let's apply our materials. Under the toy, we have the first one, and it's practice to rename it. We apply that to the color, and if we have everything set up correctly, all the UVs and so on, that should be all right. Yeah, I need to update it a little bit. Let's upload it, and yeah, and the way to stick, that will work without it if you have proper UV, but if you need something to tile, for example, by the way, you have manifold tile, and I had like the case with the flag, and I need to repeat my texture. So the way to do that would be this one rather than this one. So yeah, you could investigate this topic of manifold, but if you need to, for example, to change in some weird case the angle or maybe lower the frequency, as you could see, we have a light, pretty quick update of the texture. But we'll not do that. We'll go to the color, and the view option to consider it as color space, considering we're working in the sRGB. We're viewing this sRGB but working in the ACES. I will go and change this to sRGB texture, and that will load proper your color space. But otherwise you would go to your Renderman texture manager, as I told you, and convert this texture to text, and then upload it here. And then when you upload the proper texture, you don't need to convert it anymore. So color is pretty simple. Let's go and see what we got else. In this case, we would use a metallic one. Metallic one is the area of black and white picture, and I will go and choose a data, considering this is a black and white picture. And whereas white is more metallic thin, when it's black, it's more of not glossy thin. Okay, let's say it this way. So let's connect this properly and call it metallic. And the last one in this case, for this proper overview, let's go and grab the specular. I think this one will work, considering this have colors. I'll go back to sRGB. And by the way, if you want to preview your solo in your texture, you could press X on the keyboard, and that will create a visualizer and solo your texture. Delete this one. So we have these three, and this is common technique in this case. And you want to have something using a metallic and glossy thin. You could potentially connect that to these different slots, but I will go ahead and create metallic workflow because Renderman has the one. As you could see, we need a base color, we need a metallic, and we need a float part of the sRGB, and we need a specular, and in this case it's also a float, which means spec. We could go back and check the glossiness map. Okay, let's disconnect that, and we have three nodes to connect. The first one is the diffuse. The second one, if you hover over, you could read on this spot what you need. So it's a specular edge. Under the primary specular, we have specular edge for the first one and face for the second. And boom, you have it. You have your specularity, you have the color of your reflection, and so on. This is the way to treat your maps and textures into the metallic workflow. Otherwise, you just connect your color with specular workflow and remap it or something like that. Okay, let's go back to artistic, and I don't want to be that rough, maybe a little bit, but let's add a rough map. So connect this, call it rough. Change that to data because this is black white, and let me see what we got here more. We have a roughness map, and that is exactly what we need. In this case, we need only float component of that, and under the specular roughness, connect that. So we have something like, let me load a bit. Yeah, something like that. That is good because we have this area of roughness. Otherwise, that will not be that good. Now we have this moon specular, and this is like snow or something. It's already looking cool. It's bad lighting, but something is there. Under the roughness, what could be done is call remap, pxr remap. Again, I would try to show you the most common thing you need when you work with shading. Let's connect that to the map, and let's again connect that to the float slot. You have 0 to 1 input, you have 0 to 1 output, and you have bias and gain thing. So in this case, more to the rough, less to the rough, it's up to you, okay? 0.5 is the default number. Again, if you don't want to have 100% a specular shader, you could check that here, and again, not clamped. Another useful note would be a ramp. Yes, this is remap, pxr ramp. And this one is useful more with the numbers when you have in mind something to work with. And this one is your regular ramp when you want to tweak your color on eye. Okay, what else could be done here? I think that we need to work a bit with the bump. Again, we have both bump map, and go ahead and see what we got. I would say that bump could be this displacement, but we don't have any displacement, but we do have something like either this map of height, but that might be just overall, but let me see. Accept it. And yeah, we call a pxr bump. We need float as an input, and as a result, this purple one, this is different from others. Under the global, you have a bump normal. Okay, you connect it here, and we have something. I think this is too much, but let me see what we got. Yeah, this is updated, and this is probably, but we see that it has nice potential to that. Another great thing in the Renderman that you have bump for every lobe, as it calls. So if you want to connect and influence only the specular with this bump, so you could connect it here. Otherwise, the global is influenced all of the lobes. So, and we have a normal, again, Pixar normal map. And for the common technique that we should be used, we have this Pixar normal map, we have file name, and we have both too, but I think that all the 3D packages uses DirectX normals, and OpenGL is using in Unity or something. I might be wrong, but I think I'm right. Again, apply it, and you have a color space doing with normals. And if you have bad picture, you could flip it here. Of course, in this scenario, if we use only a bump, I will go ahead and lower that much more, something like that. But wait, let me do another thing, because we have this bump, Pixar bump mixer. This is the one that allows you to mix between bump and normal maps and so on and so forth. And in this case, we could use two layers and use directly this normal map and G vector. And of course, we don't need this, but we need this. So we connect the first one and the second one to the different layers and connect this map directly to the surface. Under here, you need to enable it, make sure that this is enabled, and you have your multiplier. So wait a bit, yeah, this is way too strong, and you have a lot of control. For example, you could go ahead and decrease it here, and for the first one we should be able to decrease it here as well, 0.5. And what I like to do is disable the first one, for example, and our normal map, and see what we got with only this one, this part. We could rotate it and see how that is working. That is working pretty well to my taste. Okay, we could lower that a bit because we have different maps, and under the normal we could do the same but the opposite, just enable this normal, and we have this nice lines on the moon shape. Okay, and I want to emphasize that, but in this case I would say that I could go with 1 and again just control it by this amount. 0.1 is great. So we have both this shaping, like filling, texturing of this surface and these lines on the moon. So that is it for the normals. That is great, and we could cover displacement as well because that is the topic who should be covered. But for now, let me check if I covered everything. All the maps I used most of the time: glossiness, specular level, base color, gravity. Okay, let's do one more, and this is actually very useful because you need to understand, you need to know one more thing. So this is ambient occlusion. I will use this map, and in order to mix two maps, two textures, we already covered that we have mixing for the surface, but to mix two textures we need Pixar blend. Once again, blend. This guy will give you the ability to choose the method of amplification. So you could connect both and connect this one as an output. You could press X to view your node, and again that will work only if you connect your node into this chain. If it's like floating in the air, that visualizer will not work. And again, just go ahead and use something like overlay and see if that is working. Yeah, but maybe multiply will be better in this case. And darken, the solve, divide difference, darken, maybe darken. Yeah, we have this area of influence. This is best. And another way is blend. So Pixar blend layers. That will have more of the layers, and you have connect different layers, and you have a mask by noise, by something else, and it has a lot of potential. I think Redshift had the same, and Documentaion had the same. So Pixar layer blend, or just blend, simple blend between two maps or two noises or whatever. Again, we have ability to use a float as a mask for the top and bottom layers, and so on. So yeah, that is the thing. And maybe, of course, I will not cover everything, but you have this pattern node, and you have all the nodes you need for the Renderman. So go ahead, see different methods for tiling, manifold, surface, layer and mixer layer, script, stylized, texture, grid, fractal, Voronoi noise, pretty well. It's pretty good, different math operation, and working with the volume. Again, I will not cover everything, but this is like very simple shader you will use when you have a prepared model. And the only topic to cover is displacement, because it has a bit of tweaking here and there. And then we'll move to the lighting. So now I changed a bit, I added a little bit of light here, added HDRI reflection, and it's overall a bit better to look at. Now dive deep into the, not that deep, but displacement. Okay, let's create another texture. And this is again most common images you would use. Call it displace. And we need a texture. In this case we have height, but I've used that, I've tried that a few minutes ago, and that is not the best to show you in this case. But if we use this specular level, again we need a black and white mask for that. Color space is data, and yeah, we have displacement, Pixar displacement node, displacement, transform displacement. One. So these two nodes will give you all the options to control your displacement. We need a float from this picture and probably displacement color to the displacement transform, and from here we take a float and connect that to displacement color, and this one is blue, is connected to the output of your shader, where your pxrSurface is connected as well. So now we did it, but still have nothing to see, and that is why we need to pay attention to render geometry settings. And as I've told you, that is where we need to always add it when we're working with displacement, when the geometry and different attribute settings as well. So go into render geometry settings, and as you could see, we have prototype attributes under Renderman, and under the displacement we need to be sure that enable displacement is on. The next thing, we need to make sure that bound radius is big enough to capture your displacement map, because this is like bound region around this one. As you could see, we have something pretty quick and detailed displacement, and it's cutted by this region, I guess. If we go with 2, that should give you more space to displace as well. Now it was the bounding radius of that. Okay, and another thing to control is dicing. Dicing is like subdivision of polygon, because the displacement goes on primitive level, and that is why we have micro polygon level lens. Okay, the more this number, the less quality you have. So the lens more than 2 will be divided into 2. I think is the distance in units. I'm not sure in what unit this is, but again, the main logic is the less this number, the more detailed displacement you will have. And one more thing to show you that this guy should be checked as well. So under your test geometry and import from SOPs, or you have SOP import from your main scene, you need to find this geometry handling and turn that on and treat polygon as subdivision surface. So that will be summer up and work for you for your displacement. So now when we set up everything, and let's say that 0.5 is too big in this example, we could go back to your displacement and control your displacement from this space. Again, we don't need this much of the displacement. Let's go and make it 10 times smaller. We have already something, nice differentiation, and this displacement is working good. And let's go less than that, even less, and when we have less geometry to subdivide, it's working quite fast again on my pretty weak machine. And yeah, and here we have Renderman mode, you could do a center one when we have pushed something inside and outside of your geometry. For this case, we could go even lower because we have like 2 directions. Yeah, that is cool. We have this pimp sticking around. We have this moon floating in, and at this point I would go and lower layer 2, not lower but increase layer 2 of normals to have more of these lines here. Maybe not that much, but and again this is like a back and forth, and we have a really nice object to look at with all this basic stuff: color, roughness, bump, normals, and displacement as well. It would be like our lights, and this is pretty fast. You have all the lights available for you to work with. For example, area light, we could place it here, select it, move it in the viewport, fast update, nice. We have different options to rotate it, to move it around, for example something like that. And again, under the light, intensity, exposure, nothing new. We have this Renderman tab, and here we have the ability to work with saturation and gamma. This is useful with the HDRIs because sometimes you want to, for example, kill your saturation and have black and white map, and that is cool. It's working quite nice. For the different options also we have visibility, camera visibility, so you don't have to you don't this object into your scene. We have different refining thing, so how far and how you will influence your intensity on specula, and for example, near distance for the specula you could eliminate the area of specula you influence to. It's like very nuances thing, but it could be useful when we have like something kind of architecture and you want to influence one thing and don't want to influence another. That is here. Another thing is for the volumetric. I will not cover that today, but it's here. You could play around with that. You could play around with shading, with shadows, and so on. These shadows is working as well, so we could potentially all parameter to create and make no shadows. As you could see here, or black shadows or red shadows. Now we have red shadows. No, we don't, but now we have it here. Also the distance for the shading. Also all this shaping is working as well. You could load your IES files, yes, and this is like profile for your lights, and that is going here. You could play around with focus. I think we could back the visibility, working with shadows, and you could see that this focus is like the area of softness you box. And what is great that you could have different colors for the area of focus. So the core will be white, and this area of fall off would be this color. And this is cool, and I don't think I have ever seen it before in any render engine. Spotlights again, I don't think that is working that nice here, but we have filter lights for that, so we'll cover that in a bit. And yeah, that is that. So what else with lights special? And the Renderman and other light, we have light filters. We have different types of that. I will not cover everything, but yeah, this is for mapping, for global light. If you were searching for that, you could find under the cookies, I think. Weird names, but who cares if it works. This is cool, I like that a lot. So if you connect this to, for example, I'll node it here, just to show you. And if you do light assignment, so what you could do is you could, first you would move your lights a bit. For example, disconnect this just to see better. Press D under the background and make it dark and go here. So we have some dramatic light. Let's imagine that this is our dramatic light. Something like that. Lower, higher. Yeah, I love that. And what this filter does is like, it is, first we need to assign this filter to this light. So we have 2 slots. We have add more of this assignment. And yeah, we screwed up our names, but at this point, who cares? I'm tired. So light path is this one. And light filters is this one. So you just drag this light filter and light path for this one. And now what is cool that you have the ability to control how your light is distributed in the scene by this barn. So this is like a window. Okay, let me create a camera just to set this up pretty quickly because it's nice view. So what I want to show you that this is like a barn, and you don't need to move your source of the light, but you have the ability to manipulate the distribution. This is like, as I've told you, this shaping, this spotlight, all these settings under here, but you have much more. So for example, you could lower the influence of your light, for example, something like that, lower the radius, and you could see that that's it. That you could refine the shape, left and right, more of that. You could scale your fall off. Sorry about that, where is that? I think edge thickness. You could, what else? Make it as low as you should, and much more. So play around with that. Different scale, different multiplication. Also you could delete through this. So in this case it's multiplying the light through this bar, but you could delete it. You could invert it. So this is like a black box. So this is like our different intensity and so much more. So this is our lights filter, and yeah, you could find here for the cookies, for different things, multiplication, and you could delete these lights with different light assessment, but now you know where to search for that. Okay, with lights it's more or less understandable. I don't think it has to be more complicated than that. Maybe you need it, but again, I want to place everything nice and dandy, so the lights go here. And the last step would be Renderman render settings. I will not cover everything, every point of these render settings, and again, go ahead and dive deep into the documentation, but from start to finish, as I've told you from very beginning. Okay, render settings, start with this camera tab. This camera tab should be linked properly, otherwise, if I go to revert to defaults, this is something it calls when you originally created. you need to link your camera to this port. Otherwise that will not work. Link the resolution. Basically you need to match the resolution of your camera. Disable ocean blur, disable depth of field, by the way, that is enabled by default, and Renderman has cool motion blur. You need to do nothing with that, just make sure that the velocity is there. The next thing that you have, that image settings tab, render settings, settings for your picture and output, IOV, different lights and samples for the race, and denoiser. And by the way, denoiser is interactive, and we'll set up your denoiser in a bit. So going to the next step, I would go to the Pixar Path Tracer, and yeah, let's turn that on and select this node. So this node is now rendering. Note, for example, if you take and click here, you will render your display settings as it mentioned here, render. Yeah, it's Renderman XPU, and this has these lower settings. But if you go here and load in your settings, that will render in the viewport. And yeah, let's check this one, why not? While we are here, we click on Enable Interactive Denoiser. That will not affect your final render settings, but you could see from the very fast process, it's already looking good. And what I'm liking about that is maintaining on the details. So you have your bump, all these lines, strips, and these bumps, and this denoiser is not ruining it. But yeah, nevertheless, Path Tracer. You have maxed indirect bounces that will determine how much bounce you will have when you're working with closed geometry, indoor settings, and so on. So to have a nice picture with low corners, dark corners in the picture, because we have open space here, it doesn't really matter because we have only direct specula and direct, not only, but here we have indirect when the rays try to catch each other. You want to go with 10, 8 or 12 even to have a nice picture. So there is enough room to race to interact in your scene. Another one would be sample mode. This could be done like for everything in your scene, or you could go and select this manually. So you will determine how much race goes for the diffuse, for the sample of the diffuse, for the specula, for the subsurface. Otherwise, it's going in the combination with each other. I think that we could go and set something like 2 for indirect most of the scene. We could set light settings and BXDF samples for 2 as well. I think these two should go in par. So if you go 4, let's increase this 4 as well, but I'm not 100% sure. Caustics and so on. This is pretty cool, right? And clamping is very important as well. So if you go to Russian roulette, this is like the scene, the probability of how fast your race will be killed in the scene. What does that mean? When you see the picture from the camera, I think, rays come to the object, or from the light source and come to the camera, and it couldn't go essentially forever, right? At some point that should be stopped. This is why we have all these settings. And this roulette, Russian roulette, will determine the probability of how fast you could kill your race. And another one is clamping your specularity, right? You could lower your, it's low enough, so you have impact on your spot. Luminance, and don't have this brighty pixel spot jittering around. In most cases it's not the case, but if you need to clamp in your... Okay, and the next scene is sampling. This is the most time you'll spend here. You have pixel filter, different modes. I will not change that in most cases. You have adaptive metric. In this case is a variance, and this is pixel variance number. So this is threshold when you need to ray min samples or max samples. When pixel doesn't change from path to path in this metric changes. Okay, so we say that 1 is 100% changes from path to path, so we need to ray more and more samples. And 0, the pixel is like rendered in 100%, it's not changing at all. We have this threshold when we can determine that, okay, we don't need max samples anymore, and we could stop and don't render this spot at all. Something like that, but you could read more about that in the documentation again, but like I think about that this way. So you could go something like 32 and 8 for the min and max sample. You could select your extra samples for the minimum, or even 4. Usually I go something like 128, 16. That will be a bit longer for the render, but of course better the quality. And we have the denoiser as well, so that is that. And other settings is not that important for this part, so if you want, you could go ahead and try to investigate this as well. Under this saving tab, okay, this is a tab for saving your picture. If you're working with AOVs, this is paths. You would need to work with compositing and so on. Pretty simple to set up, just click it and we have nothing but, for example, position and position, yeah, and we have your position. Back to the position one, and in our case, what is important to understand that we need these denoiser AOVs in order to work with the denoiser properly. We have this little button here, enable denoiser AOVs, and that will set everything up for you. You don't really need alpha, but this is a color and alpha. You could change the bitness of that, and that will work with IXR under the product image. You want to include AOVs for sure, and when you're working with denoise, you could check that off as RGBA. You don't need A, but it's not that necessary. Here we have different types of the files. You could save a PNG, OpenEXR, and so on. This is in a topic of another lesson, because we have different color management, and probably when we save that as PNG, that will give you this picture and not this one. And when we save it XR, you need to properly view it into your compositing software. So for now we just leave it as it is and save as OpenEXR. You need to determine your file location, and this is by default, so we don't need to touch this at all. That will save as a separate scope file, I think, and type, and yeah, you don't need to touch that at all. Pretty important thing that you have, I don't know if it's a bug or something, but in this case, when you save your path, you have to have the folder already existing. So when we're dealing in another software, you just specify the render with Karma or Arnold, this folder, for example, test, and yeah, that's it. And that will create this folder for you. But in this case, you need to create it beforehand and then just specify that this is a folder, this is a file path. Otherwise that will not work. The same for the denoiser. So be aware of that, because that will give you an error, and I had this error, and I a few trials and errors to figure out what going on here. So we set everything up for the denoiser as well, because we specify AOVs, and go here, use the render op. You could specify frame range and so on and so forth. Select your engine beforehand and render to disk. And let me see what we got here. So we have successfully rendered the picture, and you could create a cop network and create file, press add AOV from files, press null, and you have it. This is pretty much clean picture. Another way, you could create a viewer, compositing view, and that will give you like proper one. You could denoise it here. Just let's try to add a denoise AI as it should be. You could use your source as a normal. You could use a normal from here and albedo from here, and that is it, because we don't have nothing more. As a denoiser, I will go, I don't think optic Intel is better. I'm not sure it's working or not. You could see that is pretty good. I'm not sure. Let me check this once again. But to be honest, here's pretty cool, pretty clean, nothing too crazy, and pretty nice. Okay, this is the one way to work with the denoiser in the Houdini. And let's do another way with the Renderman. So let's move on and do denoising process in the Renderman itself and do a comparison to this file that we have already done. So it's pretty easy, but again, it has a few trial and errors. So you need to open your out context, create a fetch. So you need to fetch your USD render ROPs. Go ahead and copy this node and paste it here. This will paste a link to this node. And pretty simple, from the first glance, Renderman Denoising, connect it here. Here you will specify all the settings that should match up with this one, because this fetch and Renderman Denoise will first render this guy, use the render op, and then start the process of denoising. But again, very important to have pre-created folder, because that will not work otherwise. In this case, I just created render denoising folder, okay, something like that. And this folder, this output is, you need to specify a folder, and this node will save a file for you in that folder. Another thing very important, that I've just already added number of frame, because the denoiser, if you don't have it, will not work properly, and it will not show anything for you. So this is my very hard to find thing, and but I've already walked through this way, so you don't need to. So again, specify the folder beforehand, create it, specify your name, and of course this should be with name with number of frames or something counted. And then you could specify only a folder for this guy. So I have already lowered the quality of this guy. Okay, I just did 32 and 4 just to see like the work of this denoiser. I go ahead and save it, and let me denoise the file. That will render the file for you, and that will denoise it in the background. Okay, I have waited, and I will show you another way just in a minute. But first, let's go ahead and see what we got. So for the main file, let's select this guy. This is the one we have just saved. And yeah, it's first frame. It's pretty nasty, a lot of noise. And let's do our first denoising process with the Houdini and compare that, how it's done. Okay, it's smoothed out a bit, but overall for the still, it's a great picture. And let's load the same, no, not this one, but as you already see that you have render denoised folder, and we have this folder and file number 1, and this is the product of the Renderman itself. And as you could already see that, let's go at the compositing stop, that is much better, right? This is smoothed out. This is the version again from the Houdini, and this is version from the Renderman itself. It's super clean. It has nothing to do with noise. Yeah, it's a bit slower, and if you have a sequence of 10 seconds, an hour or half an hour to process that, but as you could see, this is a great result. And to be honest, I've done this with animation, and that was great as well, because even here you could see a lot of noise, a little bit of artifacts, but here we have clean surface, and this is like a magic. The bonus one, if you want to denoise, of course you need to have all of these and all that stuff, but you could go to the folder, to this one, program files, Pixar Renderman server, the last one, to the bin, to denoise, and you have this denoiser. This is a program, separate one, which will allow you to denoise your files not from the Houdini. Okay, so single and cross frame mode, add files, add directory, save to, and press start, and that will do basically the same as we did. But sometimes maybe you missed something and that doesn't work in this Houdini stuff. You could always go ahead and change and try this one, and this one will give you an error, and maybe that will help you to understand why that is not working. I think I cover everything, and this is very simple setup. If you need to dive more into the stage, into the layers and graph manager and so on and so forth, you probably need to read a few documents. I answered most of the question for the beginner to start with the Renderman. How to install it, how to deal with geometry, with the materials, with lights, and most important, because if you do everything and don't have any result, it's quite unnecessary, frustrating. So yeah, hope you having a great everything in your life, and we'll next time see you. Yeah, right.